Imagine this, it's 12th fight and you're trapped inside a damp, crumbling castle. Outside, an army with catapults and a bad attitude is camped out, ready to make your life miserable. Your stomach's been growling louder than their war drums for days, and the last sip of water you had tasted suspiciously like mud. No food, no clean water, and definitely no way out. Now flash forward to 2025. You're sprawled on your couch, a bag of chips in hand, ready to binge your favorite show, but oh no, Netflix is stuck on that spinning wheel of doom. You're starving for entertainment, and the only thing keeping you company is your router's mocking blink. Welcome to the ultimate showdown, Medieval Siege versus Netflix buffering. Which one tests your patience more? Let's dive into the chaos of a medieval siege and see how it stacks up against our modern day struggles. Today we're peeling back the layers of history to explore what it was like to be stuck in a castle under siege, where starvation wasn't just a figure of speech, but a daily reality. We'll look at how our ancestors survived or didn't when food and water ran dry, and we'll sprinkle in some lessons about patience and preparation that might just make you rethink your next Wi-Fi meltdown. Because let's be honest, while we're not fighting off invaders with swords, we're definitely battling our own demons when that buffering wheel spins. So grab a snack if you've got one, and let's step into a world where survival was a lot tougher than waiting for your show to load. Picture yourself in a medieval castle circa 1200s. The walls are thick, the air smells like mildew and despair, and you're surrounded by an enemy who's decided your home is their new favorite target. Sieges weren't just about storming the gates with ladders and battering rams, they were about breaking your spirit, the goal. Starve you out, cut off your supplies, poison your wells, and wait until you're too weak to lift a sword. Historical accounts from the Siege of Antioch in 1098 paint a grim picture. Defenders were so desperate they boiled shoe leather and drank their own urine to survive. While you're whining about a lukewarm coffee, these folks were turning their belts into soup. That's next level hunger. The real kicker of a siege wasn't just the lack of food, it was the waiting. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months, and every creak of the castle gate made you wonder if it was rescue or ruin. Take the siege of Rochester Castle in 1215. The defenders held out for nearly 2 months, reduced to gnawing on bones and sipping stagnant water before surrendering. The psychological toll was brutal. You're trapped with a bunch of sweaty, starving people, wondering if the guy next to you is going to betray you for a crust of bread. And let's not talk about the sanitation, or lack thereof. Crammed into a filthy castle, diseases like dysentery spread faster than gossip on X. It was like living in a pressure cooker where the only thing cooking was your sanity. Now let's pivot to our modern equivalent. You're not dodging arrows, but you're definitely dodging frustration when Netflix decides to buffer right at the climax of your show. You're cozy, maybe a little too comfortable, and then that spinning circle hits you like a personal insult. You refresh the page, you curse your internet provider, you might even yell at your roommate for streaming TikToks on the same Wi-Fi. It's a siege of sorts, except instead of starving for food, you're starving for instant gratification. But here's the difference. While medieval folks had no choice but to grit their teeth and endure, we've got options. Switch to mobile data, reboot the router, or gasp, do something else, yet somehow we still lose it over a 5-second delay. What's the thread tying these two worlds together, patience, or the lack of it? In a medieval siege, you had to ration every crumb, every drop, and hope for a miracle. Today we're rationing our tempers, strategizing how to get a better signal, and praying the internet gods don't forsake us. Our ancestors would probably roll their eyes at our buffering tantrums. Oh, your show's paused. Try eating grass for a week, they'd mutter, shaking their heads. But there's something universal about being stuck, whether it's behind stone walls or a frozen screen. Both test your ability to stay calm when life throws you a curveball. So why does this matter? Because sieges weren't just about survival, they were about resilience. The people inside those castles had to get creative. They'd smuggle supplies through secret tunnels, barter with the enemy, or even eat things that would make your stomach turn. The Siege of Tyre in 1187 saw defenders sneaking food past Saladin's army, risking everything for a sack of grain. It's the kind of ingenuity that makes you wonder, what would you do if your fridge was empty and Uber Eats wasn't an option? Would you channel that medieval grit, or would you just complain louder? Here's where it gets interesting. Those medieval sieges forced people to master the art of preparation. Castles were built with storerooms to stockpile grain, and smart lords kept their wells inside the walls. But when supplies ran low, it was about making tough choices. Do you eat the last bit of moldy bread today or save it for tomorrow? Do you trust the sketchy guy offering to sneak out for water, or is he selling you out to the enemy? These were life or death calls, and they shaped who lived and who didn't. Compare that to now, we stockpile snacks for a Netflix marathon, but how many of us are ready for a real emergency? If your Wi-Fi went out for a week, would you have a backup plan, or would you just rage tweet about it? Let's bring it home. Sieges teach us that patience isn't just about waiting, it's about planning. Medieval defenders didn't just sit there hoping for rain. They rationed, they strategized, they adapted. We could learn a thing or two from that. Next time your Netflix buffers, take a deep breath and think, what would a medieval knight do? Probably not throw the remote at the TV. They'd find a way to make it work, whether it was bartering for food or digging a new well. So maybe it's time we channel that energy, stock your pantry, keep a water stash, and maybe practice waiting without losing your mind. But we're not done yet. What happens when the enemy outside gets creative, tossing plague-ridden corpses over your walls, or cutting off your last hope of resupply? How do you keep going when starvation isn't just a threat, but a reality? And what can we learn from those who survived the unimaginable? Stick around, because we're about to dive deeper into the gritty details of siege life and how it mirrors our modern battles with impatience and scarcity. If you had to face a siege, medieval or digital, how long do you think you'd last? So we've set the scene. You're stuck in a medieval castle, the enemy's camped outside, and your stomach's staging a full-on rebellion. It's not just about hunger, it's the soul-crushing weight, the paranoia, the stench of unwashed bodies crammed together. Meanwhile, here in 2025, you're waging your own war against a buffering Netflix screen, cursing your Wi-Fi like it's a personal enemy. Both are tests of endurance, but let's dive deeper into the medieval siege, where starvation wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a weapon. We're going to unpack the gritty details of how people survived when food and water vanished, and what that tells us about our cushy tech-dependent lives. Spoiler alert, our ancestors had a lot more at stake than missing the latest episode of their favorite show. Let's rewind to the heart of a siege, say the Siege of Paris in 885-886. The Vikings rolled up, ready to make life miserable for the city's defenders. They didn't just attack, they choked off every supply route, turning the Seine River into their personal blockade. Inside the city, food stocks dwindled fast. Grain stores ran dry, livestock were slaughtered until there was nothing left but rats and roaches. Historical records tell us people resorted to eating moldy bread scraps, and in some cases things you wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, like boiled horsehide, or whatever weeds they could scavenge. Water was no better. If the enemy didn't poison your well, you were still sharing a muddy trickle with 100 other desperate souls. It was a masterclass in misery, where every day tested your will to keep going. What made sieges so brutal wasn't just the lack of resources, it was the strategy behind it. Attackers knew they didn't always need to storm the walls. Why bother when you could just wait? They'd cut off trade routes, burn nearby fields, and sometimes lob disgusting gifts over the walls like diseased animal carcasses to spread plague. During the siege of Kaffa in 1346, the Mongols reportedly catapulted plague-ridden bodies into the city, kickstarting a biological nightmare. Defenders were trapped in a petri dish of disease, hunger, and fear. Imagine the mental toll every night. You're wondering if tomorrow's the day you starve, get sick, or hear the enemy's battering rams smash through your gates. It's like being stuck in a horror movie with no fast-forward button, but survival wasn't just luck, it was ingenuity. People got creative, and I mean creative. During the Siege of Tyre in 1187, defenders snuck supplies through hidden tunnels or bribed enemy guards for a sack of grain. Some castles like Dover in 1216 had secret passages for smuggling food, but those were rare. More often, you were stuck improvising. You'd ration your last handful of barley, maybe mix it with sawdust to stretch it further, water. You'd pray for rain or risk a midnight raid to a nearby stream, and teamwork was everything. If your buddy hoarded food, the whole group suffered. The defenders of Lisbon in 1147 survived partly because they shared what little they had, keeping morale from collapsing. It wasn't just about muscle, it was about brains and trust. Of course, not everyone made it. Mistakes were costly. Some groups didn't ration well, eating through their supplies too fast. Others trusted the wrong people, like the poor souls at Chateau Gaillard in 1203, where a trader opened the gates for a slice of bread. And then there were the natural elements. Rain could flood your defenses, drought could dry your wells, and disease didn't care who you were. Malnutrition made you weak, dysentery made you weaker, and despair, that was the real killer. Entire garrisons withered away, not from swords, but from empty stomachs and broken spirits. It's a stark reminder survival wasn't guaranteed, even for the tough guys. Now let's flip to our modern battlefield. Netflix buffering isn't exactly life or death, but don't tell me it doesn't feel like a siege on your sanity. You're hyped for a plot twist, and then that spinning wheel hits, mocking you like a medieval warlord. You check your Wi-Fi, restart the router, maybe even sacrifice a snack to the tech gods, but the wait feels eternal. It's not just the delay, it's the principle. We're so used to instant everything that a 5-second hiccup feels like betrayal. Compare that to medieval folks waiting months for rescue. They'd probably trade their last crust of bread for our problems. But here's the thing, both scenarios expose how bad we are at waiting. Back then, impatience could get you killed. Today, it just makes you chuck your remote across the room. Here's where the humor kicks in. Imagine a medieval knight teleporting to your living room, watching you lose it over a buffering screen. You're upset because your magic picture box is slow. He'd say, wiping rat broth from his beard, try dodging flaming arrows while your kids eat dirt. Our ancestors would think we're soft, and honestly, they're not wrong. We've got apps to deliver pizza in 30 minutes, but we still throw tantrums when our entertainment's delayed. Meanwhile, they were out there inventing ways to make tree bark edible. It's a humbling gap, but it's also a chance to laugh at ourselves. We're not that different, we're just fighting smaller battles with fancier toys. So what's the long-term impact of these sieges? They shaped humanity's knack for survival. The people who made it through weren't always the strongest, they were the smartest, the ones who planned, adapted, and stuck together. Those lessons got baked into our DNA. Medieval sieges pushed humans to innovate, whether it was building better castles or figuring out how to preserve food. Fast forward to today, and we're still problem solving, just with different stakes. When your Netflix buffers, you're not inventing a new recipe for shoe stew, but you're troubleshooting, checking cables, switching devices, maybe even calling your internet provider in a fit of rage. It's the same instinct, just dressed up in Wi-Fi routers and curse words. But let's not romanticize the past too much. Sieges were brutal, and not everyone walked away. The ones who did taught us something crucial: preparation is everything. Castles with deep wells and stocked granaries lasted longer. People who shared resources built stronger communities. It's a lesson we could use today. How many of us have a real backup plan for when things go south? Not just for Wi-Fi outages, but for bigger disruptions, power cuts, supply shortages, or heaven forbid a week without Amazon Prime. Our ancestors didn't have a choice. They had to be ready. Maybe it's time we take a page from their book, minus the part about eating grass. If you were stuck in a siege, medieval, or digital, what would you do to keep your cool? Could you ration your snacks like a castle lord, or would you be the one yelling at the router? Think about it, because we're about to dive into the aftermath of these sieges and the lessons they left behind. How did people rebuild after starvation and surrender? And what can we learn from their grit when our modern comforts flicker out? Stay tuned, because the story's about to get even wilder. Alright, we've been through the ringer with our medieval ancestors trapped in castles with nothing but dwindling supplies and a whole lot of grit. We've seen how sieges turned hunger into a weapon, forced people to get creative with rats and rainwater, and tested their patience in ways that make a Netflix buffering wheel look like a minor tantrum. But what happened when the dust settled? How did people pick up the pieces after months of starvation and fear? And what can we in our cozy Wi-Fi dependent world learn from their survival? Let's wrap up the siege saga and draw some lines between their struggles and our own, because believe it or not, there's a lot we can steal from those castle walls to make our modern lives a little tougher in a good way. Let's start by recapping the chaos. Sieges like the one at Antioch in 1098 or Paris in 885 weren't just battles, they were endurance marathons. Defenders faced empty pantries, poisoned wells, and the constant threat of disease or betrayal. They rationed every crumb, shared what little they had, and sometimes ate things that would make your stomach churn. It wasn't just about surviving the enemy outside, it was about outsmarting hunger, fear, and the guy next to you who might steal your last handful of barley. These folks didn't have a pause button or a customer service hotline. They had to keep going no matter how grim it got, and yet somehow many of them did. What's wild is how these sieges mirror our modern frustrations, just on a different scale. When your Netflix buffers, it's not life or death, but it's still a test. You're stuck waiting with no control over when or if things will get better. The difference: our ancestors couldn't just switch to mobile data or storm out to complain at the local tavern. They had to dig deep mentally and physically to survive. That's where the real connection lies. Both scenarios force you to confront your limits. They had to ration food, we ration patience. They planned for the worst. We planned for a weekend binge watch. But the core skill staying calm and resourceful when life stalls is the same. So what did these sieges teach humanity? For one, preparation was everything. Castles that lasted longest, like Crac des Chevaliers during the Crusades, had stockpiles of grain, secure wells, and leaders who knew how to stretch resources. When supplies ran low, the smart ones got creative, think secret tunnels for smuggling or bartering with the enemy for a sack of wheat. The Siege of Candia in the 17th century, though later than our medieval focus, showed this in spades. Defenders held out for 21 years by mastering resource management and morale. That's not just survival, that's next level stubbornness. They didn't just sit there hoping for a miracle, they planned, adapted, and worked together. Contrast that with today. We're not exactly prepping for a Viking invasion, but how ready are we for disruptions? If your power went out for a week, would you have food and water stashed away, or would you be Googling how to survive on ketchup packets? Our ancestors didn't have the luxury of panicking, they had to think ahead. Take the Siege of Lisbon in 1147, the defenders survived longer because they shared resources and kept their cool even when the odds were bleak. We could use a bit of that foresight. Stocking a pantry with non-perishables or keeping a few gallons of water isn't paranoid, it's practical. Next time your Netflix buffers, maybe it's a reminder to check your emergency stash, not just your Wi-Fi signal. Another big lesson. Patience isn't just waiting, it's active. Medieval defenders didn't just twiddle their thumbs. They repaired walls, rationed supplies, and kept morale up with stories or songs. They turned waiting into strategy. Compare that to our buffering meltdowns. Instead of raging at the screen, what if we took a page from their book, restart the router, sure, but also use the downtime to do something useful, organize your desk plan your week, or heck, talk to the people in your house. It's about turning frustration into action, just like our ancestors turned desperation into survival. They didn't have Netflix, but they had each other, and that made all the difference. Now let's get real for a second. Sieges also showed the dark side of human nature. Starvation could turn neighbors into enemies. During the Siege of Jerusalem in 1099, some defenders hoarded food, leaving others to starve. Betrayal was a constant threat. Someone might open the gates for a promise of safety or a full belly. It's a reminder that survival isn't just about resources, it's about trust. Fast forward to now, when things go wrong, do we help each other or point fingers? If the grocery store shelves emptied tomorrow, would you share your snacks or hide them under your bed? These sieges force us to ask, are we building communities that can weather a storm, or are we just out for ourselves? Here's where it gets personal. Think about your own life. When was the last time you had to wait for something, really wait, not just 5 seconds for a web page to load? Maybe it was a job offer, a test result, or even a delayed delivery. How did you handle it? Did you channel medieval grit, or did you melt down like a toddler? Without Wi-Fi, sieges teach us that patience is a muscle, and our ancestors were jacked. They had to be. We might not face catapults or plague-ridden corpses, but life still throws curveballs, power outages, supply chain hiccups, or yes, that buffering wheel. The question is, can we adapt like they did, or are we too soft from years of instant gratification? Let's zoom out. These sieges didn't just test individuals, they shaped societies. The survivors passed down lessons of resilience, cooperation, and preparation. Castles got stronger with better storerooms and deeper wells. Communities learned to band together because no one survives a siege alone. Today, we're facing our own challenges: climate change, economic uncertainty, or even just keeping up with the pace of life. Those medieval lessons still apply. Stock up, plan ahead, and lean on each other. Your Netflix might buffer, but if you've got a backup plan and a cool head, you're already winning half the battle. So what's the takeaway? Sieges show us that humans are tough, but only when we're smart about it. Our ancestors didn't just endure, they innovated, they collaborated, and they kept going. We're not so different, even if our battles are more about bandwidth than bread. But here's the big question: if you were stuck in a siege, medieval or modern, how would you hold up? Could you ration your resources, keep your cool, and maybe even laugh at the absurdity of it all? Because that's what we're diving into next: how to take these ancient lessons and apply them to our lives, whether it's surviving a blackout or just waiting out that spinning wheel. Stay tuned, because we're about to wrap this up with some practical tips to make you siege ready in 2025. We've just come through a wild ride exploring the brutal reality of medieval sieges where starvation, disease, and sheer stubbornness defined survival. We've compared those gut-wrenching months of waiting behind castle walls to our modern-day battles with Netflix's buffering wheel, where our biggest enemy is a sluggish Wi-Fi signal. From the siege of Antioch's shoe leather dinners to the clever rationing at Lisbon in 1147, our ancestors showed us what it means to endure when the world's against you. But now, let's tie it all together and figure out what these gritty tales mean for us today. How can we take their lessons of patience, preparation, and resilience and apply them to our comfy, tech-filled lives? And maybe, just maybe, find a way to laugh at our own buffering-induced meltdowns. Let's hit the highlights one last time. Medieval sieges were no joke. Think empty granaries, poisoned wells, and enemies lobbing plague-ridden corpses over your walls. People survived by rationing every crumb, sharing with their neighbors, and getting creative with whatever they could scavenge. The siege of Tyre in 1187 showed us defenders sneaking supplies through secret tunnels, while Paris in 885 held out against Viking blockades by sheer grit and teamwork. These weren't just stories of survival, they were masterclasses in outsmarting scarcity. And when we look at our own lives, that Netflix buffering wheel isn't so different. It's a test of patience, a reminder that even in our world of instant everything, we still have to wait sometimes. The question is, can we handle it with half the grace of a medieval knight eating rat stew? What's fascinating is how these sieges reveal the human spirit. Back then, survival meant planning ahead, stockpiling grain, securing water, and building trust with the people around you. Castles like Crac de Chevalier became legends because they were ready for the worst. Fast forward to 2025, and we're not exactly prepping for a Viking invasion, but life still throws disruptions our way. A power outage, a grocery store with empty shelves, or even a week without internet. How ready are we really? Most of us have a fridge full of snacks and a streaming subscription, but if push came to shove, could we adapt like our ancestors did? Or would we be the ones whining loudest when the Wi-Fi cuts out? Here's where it gets real. Those sieges didn't just teach survival, they taught us about ourselves. When resources ran low, some people hoarded, others shared. Some betrayed their neighbors for a scrap of food, while others risked everything to smuggle supplies. It's a mirror to our modern world. Think about the last time you faced a shortage, maybe during a storm when the stores ran out of bread. Did you share what you had, or did you guard your stash like a dragon? Our ancestors' stories remind us that resilience isn't just about having enough stuff, it's about having enough heart. Building a community, even a small one, can make all the difference when the walls start closing in, whether they're made of stone or bad internet. Now let's talk practical. What can we steal from these medieval survivors to make our lives a little tougher in the best way? First, preparation. Stock your pantry with non-perishables. Think canned beans, rice, or pasta. Keep a few gallons of water handy because you never know when a pipe might burst or a storm might hit. It's not about being a doomsday prepper, it's about being smart. Second, practice patience like it's a skill. Next time your Netflix buffers, don't hurl your remote. Take a breath, troubleshoot the problem, or do something else. Read, stretch, or talk to someone. Our ancestors didn't survive sieges by losing their cool. They survived by staying sharp and adaptable. Another big lesson, don't go it alone. Sieges showed that teamwork was a lifeline. The defenders of Lisbon in 1147 lasted longer because they shared their resources and kept morale high. Today that might mean checking in on your neighbors during a blackout or pooling resources with friends when things get tight. We're stronger together whether we're facing a siege or a supply chain hiccup. And let's not forget the power of a good laugh. Medieval folks told stories to keep spirits up even when the world outside was falling apart. So when your Wi-Fi tanks, maybe crack a joke instead of a tantrum. It won't fix the router, but it'll make the wait feel shorter. Let's zoom out for a moment. These sieges didn't just shape the people who lived through them, they shaped history. The survivors passed down lessons that built stronger societies, from better castles to smarter ways of storing food. Today we're facing our own challenges, climate shifts, tech dependency, or just the chaos of modern life. Those medieval lessons still hold up. Plan ahead, stay calm, and lean on each other. Your Netflix buffering might seem like a small annoyance, but it's a tiny siege, a chance to practice the same skills that kept our ancestors alive. So next time that wheel spins, channel your inner castle defender. You might not have a catapult to dodge, but you've got their grit in your DNA. Here's something to chew on. What would you do if you were stuck in a siege, medieval or modern? Could you stretch your groceries for a month? Keep your cool when the world slows down, or would you be the one trying to barter your phone for a loaf of bread? These stories from the past aren't just history, they're a challenge. They ask us to look at our lives and wonder, are we as tough as we think, or have we gone soft with all our conveniences? Maybe it's time to test yourself, even in small ways, to see if you've got what it takes to outlast the next big disruption. Thanks for joining us on this wild journey through castle walls and buffering screens. If this video got you thinking or laughing about how we handle life's little sieges, drop your thoughts in the comments below. How would you survive a medieval siege? Or do you think a Netflix outage is the real test of your patience? Hit that like button if you enjoyed the ride, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that make history feel alive. If you're hungry for more, check out our video on the craziest survival stories in history for another dose of human grit. We're thrilled you spent your time with us, and we can't wait to see you in the next one. Stay tough, stay prepared, and we'll catch you soon.